America's freedom!
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for watching the John Woodard Show. We have the privilege today of interviewing Joy Ruhmann. She's state director of the Convention of States in North Carolina, and we're really pleased to have her on here. We're going to talk about where the Convention of States is, where it's going, and what you, the people that are out there and throughout the state, can do to make this a success. Joy, how are you, honey?
I'm doing well, thank you. I'm thrilled to be here today.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad to have you. How long have you been engaged in this process of the Convention of States?
It's kind of an interesting story. I was at a networking event in July of 2018, and a gentleman was leaving the group. There was a group that got together once a month, and a gentleman was leaving the group, and he'd never talked to the group about COS before. He was the first legislative liaison. I think he was probably, if you want to talk about a little of the history of where COS has been in North Carolina, he was likely one of the primary people responsible for the Senate passing our resolution in 2017, a gentleman by the name of Gary Lyons. He told us about COS, and I stood up at the end of the meeting and I said, I need to know more. At that point, I was just so tired of all the bashing of Donald Trump. I felt like he was doing a spectacular job as a president. I'm not crazy about the tweets he sent out. And I'm a leadership consultant, so I probably would have coached him to do the things a little bit differently. But he needed to have a voice, and he didn't have a voice anywhere else. So I was just so tired of it and so concerned about where things were going that I immediately came home. I looked it up online. I'll repeat this several times, but to learn about us or sign our petition, you just go to conventionofstates.com, or you can just Google Convention of States. And I signed the petition, and because my life had changed a lot a few years before, I thought, I'm going to get involved in this. Because we are a nonpartisan group. We look very conservative. We are very critical of what's happening on the progressive side of the aisle because we think that though some of the conservatives are responsible too, our country is being destroyed by Congress. I mean, that's a fact, I think. At least it's my opinion.
You're absolutely right.
I think it's most people's opinion. And, this is the only way to address Congress. There are legislators, there are voters who say we just need to elect better people. I'm sorry, that hasn't worked. Look what happened with the Tea Party in 2010. It doesn't work. And maybe you agree or maybe you don't that we didn't have fair elections in 2020. I don't know those things for certain, but I think that this is the long-term solution to saving our republic. And I think it's the only solution, quite frankly, that will work for the long term. There are some short-term things we need to do. We need to confirm, and there are groups out doing this, and I'm helping some of those groups. We need to confirm whether or not we did have fair elections in 2020. If we didn't, we need to address that. And if we didn't, and we don't address it, then I don't know that what we're doing is going to matter, because I think we've lost anyway. But this is the only way to affect things long term. So can I very quickly tell you what our goals are for Convention of States?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. We're a national grassroots movement. We have grassroots groups in all 50 states. We were started in 2013 by Mark Meckler, who was one of the founding members of the Tea Party, and Michael Ferris, who is actually doing, I'll send you this information, John, so you can promote it with he's doing one of what's called a COS at Home webinar, Michael Ferris is, to talk about where we are right now as a movement. I think it's next week. So, and anybody's free to attend. No doubt it'll be interesting because Michael Ferris is just a brilliant man and a great constitutionalist. But they started the movement because they knew that Article 5 is the way to help us rein in the federal government. I'll come back to Article 5 in a moment, but our effort is very clear. It's very well thought through. It's very, very well organized. That we are working to get a resolution passed in the North Carolina General Assembly that calls for a convention of states that bypasses Congress, where we talk about just three things. We want term limits for all federal officials. We want fiscal restraints on the federal government. And there's a group that's been working on a balanced budget amendment for 40 years. A balanced budget amendment scares me because they just keep spending and then they take everything we own. And what I've heard people say that if they take everything that every American owns, they still won't pay off the debt. So that's not going to work. And then the last one is we want to limit their scope of responsibility. We've certainly seen overreach when it's come to dealing with COVID. We see overreach with education. We've seen overreach with the Commerce Clause. I mean, Congress has just, with a lot of help from the Supreme Court, Michael Ferris has written a lot about this, they have stepped so far out of the box that was put together when our Constitution was built that we want to put them back in the box. And there's absolutely no question about it that the Convention of States is the only mechanism that plausibly is available to create change and do it on a large enough scale to be effective. If we wait to do it by the ballot box, there'll be the landscape will have changed so many times that we'll be constantly starting over. So I applaud you and the others that are involved in the process. What are you? You've got regional coordinators. Are there any regional or community coordinators that you've got where you've got blanks in the state? Where you don't have any representation? We do, and I wish I could tell you exactly where they are, but the way we're structured, both at the national level and at the state level, I may be state director, but I'm one of the least important people in the state from a convention of states perspective. The most important people in the state are what we call our district captains. We work to recruit district captains in each House district in the state. And we ask two things of them. We ask a lot of them, but basically two goals for them. Their goal is to find as many active volunteers as they can. We often talk about find your top 25. 25 people that you could reach out to them and you might have 10 of them show up at something later in the week. Just you've got your core group of 25 volunteers. And we've got the petition that they can access to find those volunteers. The second thing we want them to do is to build a relationship with their legislator. Because one thing that I don't think most North Carolinians do, most people don't do, is they're not engaged enough with their legislators, the people who are representing them. And so we want to build really strong relationships with the legislators so that we can, call them up and get their help and again, encourage them to support convention states. We started in 2013 here, and the Senate passed the resolution in 2017, but we didn't have the support in the House we needed. And one of the things we realized when I became state director in 2020, one of the things we began to talk a lot about is we don't have the grassroots we need. In order to make something happen like we want to happen, it's got to have grassroots.
Absolutely. And
it's got to have grassroots. So if I may interject, we've just done something really exciting. We a volunteer from another state came up with what we call a district captain recruiting campaign. And it involves us sending out a text to supporters in a particular House district. And it's a short text, and it's got a link to a landing page that has that talks about why they should get involved. I don't know the exact numbers. If I thought about we're going to talk about this now, I'd have looked it up. But we've sent that out in probably 40 or 50 House districts, and we've had at least 20 to 25 people respond in the last week.
Wonderful.
It is wonderful, and many of them won't work out because they don't really know what the role requires, but they could become something called a Telepatriot volunteer. We have a phone call system where we call our constituents to get them to call their legislator. And if you don't have time to organize teams, then you often have time. I mean, spend 30 minutes a week making phone calls, and that makes a difference. And the cool thing about these phone calls is that you're calling like-minded people, so they like to hear from you. They like to hear from you.
Well, the biggest issue that we need to impart to people that we talk to, it would seem to me, is to tell them what we were just speaking of a moment ago, that we've got a narrow window. This is going to be the most consequential election in our lifetimes. And for those people that think that change and reining in the size and the scope of government is necessary, this is the mechanism that's going to make that happen. I believe that people are going to, when they hear about this, I want to, by virtue of this and some other things, to try and get the information out to the public. I think when people hear about it, and they won't have to really find out very much to realize how important it is that they will run to the Convention of States.
I think that's true. We have people among the conservative movement and the more progressive movement that are afraid of what we're trying to do. They suggest, you won't be able to control the convention and so forth and so on. That we've got one particular Republican that you and I were speaking about on the call before this call, who's adamantly opposed to us because he says we're going to lose our gun rights. Well, there's several reasons that I say, no, nothing like that's going to happen. Number one, the only three things we can talk about at the convention are term limits, fiscal restraint, and limiting the scope and responsibility. Where under those three things could anybody take away gun rights?
Especially since those are very popular issues with just about everybody of both political stripes.
That's right. And on top of that, I don't know what the number is right now, but historically, we've always had more. I can't say historically always, but in recent years at least, we've always had more Republican-controlled legislatures than the more progressive. As the progressives that want you to lose your gun rights. So the process. Let me kind of tell you the process, so those people that don't know about us, they understand what the process is. We get our resolution. It's called HJR 233, passed in the North Carolina General Assembly. We get 34 other states, and we're up to 17 now. We're halfway through. We get 33 other states, if we get it done, to pass it, and that allows us to call for the convention. Congress has one role in calling the convention. According to the Constitution, they shall set the date and location of the meeting. That's all they do. And the rest of it is up to us. And so I often say to people who are concerned about this idea that they're going to do things at the convention we don't want them to do. And this is how Mark Meckler does. Mark Meckler says to people, okay, give me one thing that you think could come out of a convention that we can't find 13 states to stop. Because we have to have 34 states to call for the convention. After the convention is held, all we're doing in that convention is proposing amendments. Proposing is synonymous with the word suggesting. We're suggesting amendments that go back to the state legislatures for ratification. It is not until 38 state legislatures. I mean, you only have to have 13 to stop it. It's not until 38 state legislatures, all pass those in their general assemblies, that they become law. So I just don't understand the people who are afraid. The stopgaps are huge.
There was something said to me recently about guns. People were saying that gun rights were going to be infringed, and I have, I mean, that's a left position. That's not a right position. I don't know where they're coming up with that. I got it by email, and it's been hard to go back and question them about what their thinking was in making that statement. But that was certainly something that I heard on the email when I was talking about the general proposition of Convention of States being the solution to a problem that's gone on for generations, and that this is probably the one and only chance that we're going to get to do this.
Right. Well, and again, a lot of that has to do, I think people's fear around that comes from the fact that they don't understand the process.
I think that's very true.
I mean, and that's part of, we are very focused in our movement on education. We want people to understand how it will work and so forth and so on. And we have a lot of documentation about that. There's even a simulation's been done to show that it could be done. And the people when we mention the idea of the simulation, they go, but that was fake. That wasn't the real situation. The arguments that we hear, the opposition and the excuses that we hear from our conservative representatives are troubling. I mean, several of them have this idea that we're going to lose our gun rights. Well, there's just no proof, no evidence, and there's no reason that would happen, because the next step, once we get the resolution passed, we're gonna work with the General Assembly to define the role of a delegate. They've got to figure out who's going to represent us at the convention. They should start working on that right away. And so, we work on and then what's their role, and what do we do if they do something we don't want them to do? In West Virginia, we'll work on something called a Faithful Delegate Act. In the state of West Virginia, when they were working at one point on their Faithful Delegate Act, some of their legislators were suggesting that if a delegate to the convention suggests anything that is outside of the scope of the convention, they should be fined $500,000.
Wow.
I like it.
Well, I mean, it certainly is an attention getter. I don't know if
you might not ever get anybody to be. That's right. We hope you wouldn't have to go that far, but it's disturbing. We've heard one of the most disturbing things I've heard. I want your listeners to hear this, because this is very troubling to me. From several members of the North Carolina General Assembly, these are all in the Senate, is that we can't do this right now. We need to be one of the last ones to do it. The 32nd or the 33rd or
everybody wants to be last. Make sure they've got cover with others that went before them.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I pushed back on that in North Carolina because we were first and free. Okay, they don't know some of the stuff I've learned through this movement about our North Carolina founding fathers and their involvement in the First Amendment, and how our Constitution almost parallels the federal Constitution. So the reason that they say they want to be last is because North Carolina is trending blue. So if by the time we get to the convention, we may be a blue state. Well,
boy, talk about a cowardly point of view.
Okay, so and I want to look at them and say, okay, and I did. I said this to one of the people that said that to me. I said, so does that mean we don't try to keep it more conservative if that's what we want it to be? I mean, it's our job to work on that.
People don't understand what's at stake here. I mean, I have written article after article including one just the other day about technocracy and transhumanism. And I was quite surprised the next day to talk to a young man that I know in the western part of the state who he's very skilled with IT. And he told me, he said, a lot of people in his age group and in his, in his sphere, the sphere that he works in, working with the, web designs and this, that, and the other. He said, there's a lot of people that I deal with every day who believe what you wrote in that article, and that the destruction of the United States and through them the world is going to occur, and that people are going to, there's a movement to create a human machine. Kind of reminds me of Mr. Data on Star Trek, some years ago. Remember that? And I'm, and I'm saying, my God, I would have, I thought that, when I wrote that, I thought that was, that it's hyperbole, but it's something worth thinking about. And I was surprised to find out I was right, even though I didn't intend to be.
Now, does this young man think that it's a good thing we're going in that direction?
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, but he works in it and sees it happening.
But what he was telling me was, your thinking isn't as far out as you might have thought.
Right, it's frightening, some of the things that are happening in our world, and it is unfortunate that a lot of people aren't familiar, don't know all that's happening. I won't suggest that our movement is going to save everything, but it's certainly I think we are the only solution to rein in the extremism that seems to come when people are in DC too long. They don't have to be there too long. They can go up there that way, but I don't even understand somebody who wants to be in a job like that at 80 years old, but that's their choice. I don't think they should be allowed to do that at 80 years old unless they run for office at 76, and maybe there should be an age limit on that. I don't know. But we're working to focus on taking us back to the amazing government that our founding fathers gave us. I think we've all heard the phrase that Benjamin Franklin said to, I think it was a woman asked him, so now what have you given us? And he says, Madam, a republic if you can keep it. Well, I think we're real close to losing our republic right now.
We most certainly are. And there's a lot of people out there that are, they have the idea that something needs to be done, but they don't know what to do, don't know how to do it. They're looking for somebody to be a leader, and there are folks out there like Sloan Rackmuth, who's really working very hard on the critical race theory and so forth, so there are plenty of people out there that are doing all different things in an advocacy sort of way, so we'll see how that comes out. We're having a Zoom meeting with them this afternoon.
Good.
But after you and I finish talking.
Well, and all those things are critical, because we have to deal with what's right here in front of us. The issue with critical race theory, the issue with the election. We have to do all of that, and I'm game to help them as much as I can, while we also deal with a solution that helps us make sure we don't get here again. And
Judy's going to be on the call, incidentally.
Excellent.
What about how are you getting the message out, except by word of mouth?
Well, it's mostly by word of mouth. I will say that our national organization is now advertising on Newsmax, which is a good thing.
I saw that.
Okay, that's a good thing. But almost the rest of it is we have a strong social media team. The team has really, the grassroots for COS has really grown in the last 2 years. We've got a state communications coordinator, and I don't even know how many state content writers and social media warriors he's got, but he's got people promoting on all kinds of platforms. I think as a national organization, they have accounts with Getter and Gab and Telegram and so forth. And then we set one up that's called Friends of COS North Carolina. And so we have one on Telegram. I think one's just gotten set up on Getter. I've kind of stayed away from that because I'm not very. I lose a lot of time with social media, so I try to stay away from some of it. Don't want to do it too much. We have state content writers. We've got a new state content writer who's very, very, very historically accurate and knowledgeable. And he has just written an op-ed for the News and Observer. We hope it'll get in the paper, and he's going to be doing more of that. So locally, we don't have any money at all. There's not a person in the state of North Carolina that, unless there's one person in the state of North Carolina on the national staff. He has a paid position. All the rest of us are volunteers. We're giving of our time. And so everything we have to do in some, word of mouth. We try to do meetings. We'd love to speak to groups. We've got people all across the state that are very good at speaking to groups. So if you got a group, somebody out there's got a group they'd like for us to come talk to, reach out to John, reach out to me. We'll get somebody there because we love to share our information.
Would you like to do some live streaming?
Sure.
Have you contacted the district chairs for the Republican Party in North Carolina?
We don't. There are district chairs with the Republican Party that don't support us.
That don't what?
That do not support us.
Oh, I'm sure that's true.
And so our efforts when it comes to either party, because again we're nonpartisan, is to our volunteers get engaged. They become a precinct chair, or they become they run for a county seat, county chair, or that kind of thing. So we've got volunteers engaged in many of the different county parties, but we've never really gone out in that way. I'm actually attending a planning meeting this weekend that's going to have almost every conservative group from across the state coming together to talk about election integrity in future elections. So I'll have my COS button on right there for everybody to see, and I'll promote it to anybody who will talk to me. There are people there. There are I know of at least 2 people who are going to be there that are adamantly opposed to us and push back every opportunity they get. And they do it with fear-mongering. That's what they do.
That's what this is about. That, this is a way to either educate the fear-mongers or to educate the rest that are not getting the information from the fear-mongers. There are people that block it all out and try not to keep it from getting to the average person. But we can do live streaming. There's all kinds of things we can do to help support you. Just a question of what it is that you need. And so we'll be talking to Joy about that and you.
Yeah. So whenever we any way that volunteers can get involved, we actually have a volunteer who recently created a podcast that's primarily COS focused, but it's not just COS. We've named it Life, Liberty, and Grassroots Activism. And so right now we're trying to get, we're trying to get a reporter with the Carolina Journal to talk with us about redistricting on the podcast, because we want to use that as a way to educate people.
Well, Carolina Journal can do a good job with that, especially if they put it in their paper.
Well, we've wooed them as much as we can. We'll continue to work on that. I facilitated a meeting with Amy Cook and Mark Meckler They've not gotten quite behind us like I hope they will at some point. But and things are changing rapidly. We languished again. It takes 34 state legislatures to have passed the resolution, and we languished at 15 for almost 2 years. In a period of 1 week this year, just I don't know if it was last week or the week before, time flies, but we passed the Nebraska General Assembly and the Wisconsin General Assembly, and we passed the House and the South Dakota General Assembly. So things are moving fast, and states are getting on board. I hope that these states that have moved forward are going to light a fire under the North Carolina General Assembly. There are days I get a little discouraged that we may not get through the Senate this year. We passed in the House. It's been 8 years working to get to the House. We passed in the House on May 5th of 2021, and we want to get to the Senate. It went over to the Senate on May 6th, and it just sat on the desk of the rules chair. He won't move it.
No, he's not going to move it because he's responding to the general mentality that you had heard previously, that what the heck, there's no point in sticking our neck out because Cooper's going to veto it anyway.
Well, no, and in his case, it's bigger than that because he voted against us in 2017. So he's never supported us.
Yeah.
Again, he voted no in 2017, and one of the things that's troubling to me, I hope I can say this on your show, is one thing that troubles me is that one person has that much influence in the North Carolina General Assembly.
Well, that's been my point all along. One person standing in the way of the entire state, exercising its right to free speech and its right to have these issues heard and debated, it's pure public policy 101 to me.
Yep.
But
Yep.
What else can you tell me about where you're going and how you're going to get there?
Well, we're working on that right now in terms of our strategy. We had a strategy meeting. One thing we really want to do is to continue to build our grassroots team, get more petition signers. Just this interaction with you hopefully will increase our petition base by some percentage. We've grown. It was fascinating. People really did kind of wake up. In 2021, we got over 20,000 petition signers when every year prior to that, we never topped 12,000. This is kind of funny, the month that Biden pulled out of Afghanistan, we got almost 5,000 petition signers in that 1 month because people are afraid. They're concerned. And so certainly anyone on this call can call their senator. You can call your House member too, but right now it's getting through the Senate in the 2022 short session is what's important, because if we don't get through the Senate in the 2022 short session, we have to start all over again in 2023. We'll continue to work as the grassroots on that issue. We're hoping, we feel a little bit like we're just stuck until this redistricting issue is taken care of, because we will campaign for candidates that support our movement. We don't coordinate any of our campaign activities with the candidate, but if they will commit to a survey that we offer to support us, then we'll help them with their race by handing out literature and block walking and so forth. We just do it independent of them, the most important thing that we've got to do is get the Senate to take it up. We've been told, I hate this phrase, but we've been told that it'll get passed in 2022 if we have the votes. Well, I don't like that phrase, because there are 28 Republican senators in 2021, before they haven't really closed the long session, but they're not active in it. When they were still active in the long session, that we had 25 votes. If they had taken it to the floor, Mark Robinson, who is an official endorser of our movement, he is listed on the COS.
Yes, ma'am.
He's an official endorser of our movement. We had 25 votes. At least they told us. You know, one of the most, there's a lot of troubling things I've learned as I've been doing this work. One is that legislators tell you one thing to your face and say something altogether different to their colleagues. They will not be truthful with us at times. And on
well,
COS,
they said they tell you what they need to say in order to get you to conclude the conversation, move along, and then there's okay, I've got I'm got that problem solved, and go on. And and I mean, really, it's awful. I've got a lot of friends that are in the General Assembly in both houses, and I'm you get really frustrated with there's an awful lot of followers up there, not too many leaders.
That's a true statement. That's an absolute true statement. So, we've just got to continue to push the Senate to take this thing up and move forward, and to let them know that we're still here. We're not going anywhere. I mean, we're only going to get stronger here in North Carolina. And so if they choose not to take it up, then we'll start to work on finding people to replace them. That's what we need to do.
There's an awful lot of work to do, and I cut to the chase. And if the project, if something is worth doing, I want to find the way to get it done with the maximum effort and the maximum result.
Me too. Me too.
And I believe that Convention of States may not be the perfect answer, but it's a good answer, and it's a good solution, and get the results of that are going to be really meaningful if we're to save our republic.
That's right. That's right. And I'm when I'm talking, I don't get a chance to talk to all of the folks, say in the General Assembly, that don't support us. I've never had a chance to talk to Keith Kidwell himself, because he's not a supporter of ours. But I want to look at him and say, okay, if this is not the solution, what is your solution? I don't think there's another one.
No, there isn't.
I'd like to tell your listeners very quickly, our founding fathers, I think if you listen to podcasts like this, you already know our founding fathers were remarkable men. They were brilliant. I often wonder, how is it that they figured out what they figured out? And sometimes I want to go back and have lived my life then, when you didn't have all these distractions, and you read a lot and you thought a lot, because I know it's because they read a lot and thought a lot. But just 2 days before they signed the Constitution on September 17th, 1787, Colonel Mason stood up and said, "This document does not protect the people from the tyranny from our government from our government becoming the tyranny we fled to form this country."
Right.
And he updated the language that was in Article 5. Article 5 at that moment, on September 15th, before they updated it, only allowed Congress to propose amendments to the Constitution, which they've done 27 times. George Mason said, we got to let the people do it. And so he proposed new language that allows the states to call for a convention, to organize a convention, to propose amendments at a convention, and have those amendments sent back to the state legislatures to be ratified. He proposed all that language on September the 15th, 1787. If any of us know much about our history, we know there was a lot of contention in that room. There was a lot of debate in that room. Colonel Mason's suggestion to change the language was not just passed by everybody in the room unanimously. It was passed with no discussion. That, I see that as fairly providential, because it was 2 days before they signed off on that document that we got this opportunity. And so I just think it's the right solution in the long term to save our republic. So,
boy, if there was ever a case of believing that God was speaking through man, I think that was probably the one example that you could certainly point to make that case.
And there were many during that time frame, as there have been many in other time frames. But it's just, to me, that's a remarkable story behind this opportunity that we have that's so powerful. And that has, it's an incredibly high bar to do what we're trying to do. And we have to get 34 state legislators to approve, to pass this resolution. Then we have to get 38 state legislatures to ratify any amendment, whether it comes from Congress or it comes from the states. They set everything at a very high bar because it should be set at a high bar. It should be set at a high bar, and it is, and so we're just going to continue pushing to make it happen because we think it's the right thing to do.
There's some planning that needs to be done, but I'll talk to you about that. When we have off camera.
Okay. All right.
But this has been a very enjoyable discussion.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it as well.
And it's if it wasn't so important, maybe some people could just slough it off. But it's the most. I think it's a fair statement that this is the most important issue of our time, and that the survival of the United States hangs on whatever is just this effort.
I think you're right.
If this fails, I just don't see where the survival of the country is going to, what's going to be the mechanism that keeps it that way, because so many evil forces out there, and I'm really worried about it. I grew up like you did, living a good life, having a good relationship with my parents, all the things that have happened in the course of a normal upbringing and adult life. And now here we are faced with forces that want to tear our economy down because our free speech, they need to eliminate our free speech.
I think they need to eliminate our free speech so that they can take over the power and control everything.
Exactly right.
And
people that don't think about all this, you think that you would expect that if somebody heard the way you grew up and the way you reared your children is going to vanish unless we can get something done to improve the governance of our country. You would think that a lot of people would stand up for that, and there's so many people that are angry right now with the way that our government has been run in the last 12 months. I believe that people are going to be hungry for a solution and run to it. But you got to get the word. You got to get the word to them.
Absolutely, absolutely, and we work every day at doing that. I think I love that you. it said that, I really strong team in the Craven County, Onslow County area.
Yes.
The regional captain there is retired. He's a retired Army nurse, and he's just amazing. And one of his volunteers videotaped him speaking to a group. And I'd not heard his story about getting involved with us, but his story is similar to mine. Okay, mine being a little bit different. One day he literally throws a pillow. Fortunately, he said it was just a pillow at his television. Considered putting his fist through it because he was so angry, and he suddenly realized, God, I'm doing this every day, and this isn't going to save our country. So now he signed our petition. Like me, he signed up to be a district captain. He's now a regional captain, and he's got a very interesting plan going on in Bill Raven's area. Bill Raven being chair of the Rules Committee that's been holding us back in the Senate. That we got to make sure it's okay with national that we do what we're planning on, but it should make a difference. It'll help us get more petition signers and help us influence Raven. So it's for your listeners who are doing just that. They're listening to your podcast. You're watching your videos, and they're sitting in front of the TV screaming at the newscasters because they don't like what they're hearing. It's time to get up off the sofa and do something. And
absolutely.
I'm the first one to say I didn't do it till 2018. And I didn't start doing it in a really big way until 2020. I'm lucky now that I built enough of a team that maybe now I can go back to making a little money because I've been doing this all the time. But this is that important to me. So
this has been a very enjoyable conversation, and I look forward to talking with you further.
Anytime.
I'll keep in touch with Judy, of course, and we'll see how things progress. Maybe I can have you on at another time, and you can bring us up to date on what has transpired in the meantime.
Would love that. Anytime.
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you've enjoyed this conversation as much as I have. I hope you've learned something by it. Tell your friends. This is a all hands on deck proposition, and Joy and her group of volunteers are there to help you, help you learn what needs to be done, what you need to do, how you can do it. And so, and if you have any questions and you can't get a hold of them, get a hold of me, and you know how to do that.
Let me quickly
I'll get in touch with them for you.
Go to www.conventionofstates.com and sign the petition first. After you've done that, stay on that page, and there's a Take Action tab where you can sign up to be a volunteer. We'd love to have you on our team.
Wow, that's something I should have remembered.
Okay, that's okay. All right.
Thank you very much, Joy. It was a pleasure.
Yep, I enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Uh-huh.